Welcome, everyone. And this is Chari Elam from the Beast Fly Monthly Magazine. And I'm gonna tell you what, I hit it this time. I want every one of you to stop and pay attention because I have Ben Moore of Ben's Bees, and he's not from our neck of the woods. He's from Australia. And I know I'm kind of giddy. I'm kind of like a roadie on a rock and roll tour. But this is so cool for me, Ben. I'm so glad to have you here.
Thanks for having me, Sherry. I'm absolutely excited and pumped. So really looking forward to this episode.
Well, great. Well, I don't know how many people in your world. I'm sure a lot know who you are. You don't have to explain it at all. But in the United States, I know you have a good following, but just to humor us, tell us a little bit about Ben.
A little bit about Ben. Well, where Ben's from is in a little city called Melbourne in Australia. So look at Australia on the map. It is sort of down the bottom, just above Tasmania on the mainland. So that's where I'm from. That's where I grew up and been a beekeeper for, I think, just over 30 years. Now, when I say that this is a true story. I said to mum and dad when I was 14, I was an only child, never had any brothers or sisters, so I had to create my own entertainment. I grew up in the country, this area called the Yarra Valley. And I said to mum and dad, I don't want a puppy or a kitten. I wanted a beehive. Now, my mum is English, being a pom, bit like this with the money. So I had to work and save up $60 Australian back then, which is probably about 45 US dollars, and bought myself my first beehive. And I've had them ever since. Now, it's been a business for me since 2008. Now, when I say a business, I can assure you and all the listeners, all the watchers, that I work for the bees. The bees don't work for me. So absolutely love what I do. Everything I do is about the bees. I'm dreaming about bees, thinking about bees. Got the bee tattoo up here. It's a bit cold here because we're in winter. Because you're in
I
summer.
know.
You're in summer, aren't you?
We just started summer. It's yeah, so it's hot. Yeah, it's hot here.
That's awesome. That's cool. I love the hot weather.
I
Hot
do
weather's
too. I do too.
yeah.
If I can't wear flip-flops, then it's too cold. You know, right? So,
Love it.
so it is winter there. So you started when you were really young. You've been doing this a minute. Wow. Does your family participate with you, your kids and your wife?
So in regards to my parents, my mum and dad know. So call myself a first generation beekeeper. I do get the children. So I've actually got number 5 child due in 1 month, middle of July, and hopefully another beekeeper in the making. So my children, yeah, they do help. I've got to pay them per hour because they do like it, except when they get stung, they get a bit sooky, which is. You know. So yeah, so that I do get them helping. My partner, so she helps. So she helps in this is my little factory that I got, and just behind there we do a lot of candles. It's very liquish, all sorts. As far as a business where it goes, I run quite a few hundred hives, and it's obviously we've got honey, we've got pollination, got an online shop making beeswax candles, do pest
Oh,
control. Things like we get some certain pests. Now that's not. I'm very mindful of chemicals and things, but things like we've got this little pest called the European wasp, which are very pretty bad here, which we'll talk about soon. But so yeah, it's a very hosting hives with businesses, mentoring, that type of thing. So it's a very broad, big sort of area as to what I do.
wow. And so candles, you said candles first, so I almost have to believe that you put a lot of importance on your candle part of your business.
Yeah, certainly do because not in Australia, there's not a heap of people do pure beeswax candles. Now, our population, I think, in Australia, now we're a big continent. We're big. It's only I think 26 million. So I'm not.
Wow.
How many people are in? What's the population of America? That's no. That's I've got. Yeah. I've got a feeling. Yeah, add a zero on there. That I think it might be 250 million, but maybe. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd have to Google that one, but it's so and I think it's like 92% of the population on the coast.
Oh,
So it's
wow.
very interesting. So there's not a heap of people that do beeswax candles. So I love them because the smell is beautiful.
Oh, of course.
It's and we make those during winter. I'm looking at just here, there'd be, I don't know, we make it during winter, so because spring somewhere we don't have to make them, but there'd be I don't know, 300 to 400 kilos of candles made just
Wow.
on the left of me. So yeah, so yeah, very very licorice all sort type business.
That's awesome. Well, it's products of the hive. That's what we call, I don't know if y'all call it that, but we call it products of the hive. And really off season, it's good to do that, and that's because we're always doing that. We're always trying to earn an income
Yes,
as we, whatever season we are in, we need to make money to pay for the habit or the hobby
yes,
or the business, right?
yes,
Oh,
that's right.
that is incredibly awesome. So you're in winter right now. When does your spring start? What month does your spring start?
Yeah, so as far as spring, so technically what's that's in September. But as a beekeeper, my spring starts next month, sort of mid July, towards the end of July. That's
Mhm.
where some of the pollination starts. So, what do we have? We got the plums. So, I pollinate orchard, and there's in a little, call it a town called Swan Hill, which would be about 4.5 hours north of where I am. And it's obviously a lot warmer, a lot drier, and then plums start. And so, like this awesome little organic a field orchard of plums. And that starts for me. And then we start going into other things. Some what do we got? We got apple cider pears, blueberries. So yeah, a lot of I deal with a lot of small farms. So and a
Love
lot of
that.
yeah, and I'm very picky where they go. So they're all pretty much organic, these farms. That's really cool.
And so are you gathering nectar or pollen from those pollinations?
No, no, a lot of those don't. So I've got bees that sort of do different things. So I've got me bees which do the pollination, and so they're pollinating various orchards. So they
Mhm,
go pretty much from one to the next
mhm,
almost. And they pollinate them. And then I've got some other bees which I like my honey
mhm.
producers.
We call
And
that
then
production hives.
production hive,
Production hives.
production hives. And by the way, I love the American accent. It's just
Well, mine's not. Mine's Texan.
Texan, Texan. I love the Texan accent. I love it.
Yes. Thanks.
Um, so it's yeah, it's got production hives, so do different things, and then and it works well. It's got that nice sort of equilibrium
Mhm,
and healthy, happy bees.
sure.
Because a lot of the pollination where I'm going is right next to bushland, so it's sort of a win-win. I've got to be
Mhm,
careful. With the bees that are doing pollination don't all swarm. You know what I mean? So it's a
right.
really interesting one. Yeah.
That's cool. So I guess there were very similar in a lot of ways then, because commercial beekeepers, they basically do the same. They do a lot of pollination, and then they have hives they move in certain locations, pollination and honey production and different times. It's very fluid, which is awesome because it enables you to have the health that is required. I know pollination in the United States, a lot of commercial beekeepers go to California to pollinate almonds.
Yes.
And there's such a particular hive that they'll let do that. I mean, it has to, you talk about straight A's. I don't know how you're graded in your school system, but with the way we are is it's like the alphabet, A, B, C, D, and F, right? You fail. A is premium. Well, they have to pass and they have to be A to be pollinating over in almonds for California to let them in. And is that part of your the way y'all do it? Are you graded on how well your bees are to go pollinate? Or are you more localized where you don't have to go through that?
That is a really good question. So the answer for me, no, I don't need to be graded because I think with the farmers that I deal with, they will come and look at the hives and see this, great influx of bees leaving the hives, leaving out, and coming back in. So it's only happened. I've heard from two different orchardists over, sort of well over a decade, where they weren't happy with the previous beekeeper.
Hmm.
And all respect to those previous beekeepers, they were getting very, very old. and they were just sort of starting to wear out. Totally understand, and that happens to all of us. So, but yeah, it's usually the farmers. The farmers know, I mean, they know there's this, they're good, strong hives, and I think
Yeah.
most people would know. So yeah, none of my hives have ever been graded. I have heard there is auditors like that will audit your hives to make sure, like you just said, are they graded to this,
Mhm.
absolute fantastic Mickey Mouse sort of condition. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, and I think and I don't pretend to even know the details of it, but from what I have heard, it's like for ants, because ants are very, I mean, I'm sure that if they get over there, then they start creating issues for their orchards, and that's a problem, so they don't want that. Other pests, I don't know how, to the degree that they test for, but you'd think that just being good, healthy hives would be enough, but regulations.
exactly, exactly.
Laws and regulations, and we won't even bark down that road as
Yeah,
far as yours compared to ours. We may be a touch more touchy over here than you are in Australia. I sent you a series of questions and I could have kept going. I looked up and I went, oh dear, I've got way too many questions for this segment. We may have to do this again if I don't get to everything. And I may jump around. So you don't have Varroa mites.
a good question. Now, the answer is not yet. So Varroa mite. So when I say not yet, I suspect. So Victoria is quite a big. It's a big state. So look at Australia, sort of down the bottom. We've got New South Wales, Queensland, Northern Territory, South Australia, Western Australia. So big area. Like it's now. Was it 2 years ago? Pretty much around now, Varroa destructor was detected in New South Wales, so Sydney. Now, give an idea of people with the landscape. So you can drive from Melbourne to Sydney non-stop. It takes about 9 hours.
Mm.
9 hours drive. So I think it's 900 and something kilometers. Now they've got Varroa detected, and they went all berserk. The Department of Prime Industries, the government, and we're trying to contain this Varroa mite, killing hives. I think it killed 20, 30,000 hives or something. But no, it's slipped through the gaps, been here too long, and it's escaped. So, but what happens, interesting one, is next in about a month and a bit time, 6 weeks time, almond pollination. So then that's a big crop for us. So almonds. Now, beekeepers from everywhere are going to be going.
Yeah.
They're our border of New South Wales and
Mhm.
Victoria, and it's massive. It's a big area for almond orchards. So we're going to get it. We're going to get it. So we've gone into this eradication process to now management. So with my hives, we will have Varroa, I suspect, end of the year is when
Oh,
everyone
I
says,
hate to
yeah.
hear that.
Yeah. So we made, I think it's 202 years since the European honeybee, Apis mellifera, has been in Australia. We made 202 years, and I think we're the last continent to get it. But we'll be okay because we'll learn
Of
from the.
course.
We'll be okay. We just got to be better beekeepers.
Well, we do have to be, and that, our, we've been talking Varroa since about 2006, really, even though it came over, it was actually the 80s, 1980s that it was here, 1986, I believe. But 2006 is when everybody went, oh, this is really the answer to what we've been dealing with, this nutrition issues, population issues. I mean, it nearly annihilated bees from pollination in almonds in California. So now fast forward all these years and we manage it. It's tough, but you know that. But I think that's where countries can really be helpful to each other. What hasn't worked for us, y'all don't, it's not like y'all need to start from the drawing board. You don't have to start over because it's been done. It's all over. So everybody's been trying all this stuff, whether it works or not. Um, a matter of fact, I wrote an article today about all the ways to control Varroa without going and firing all guns at it. And it has a lot to do with management practices, requeening, and mechanical means, screen bottom boards and so forth and so on. I'm sure that y'all will do fine. I look forward to how, because I believe that it takes other countries and their different view of it, and the newness, your newness in it, that's going to give you a different outlook and different, and it's going to feed us some good ideas that we may be stale on.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. And we're very sort of adaptive, and who knows, who knows what the solution is. It could be some coral from the middle of the ocean that you dry in the dehydrator and grind that down in a mortar and pestle and
Wouldn't it be great?
add a bit of cardamom and a bit of spice or something, and then throw it in the hive, and there's the magical cure. So who knows? It could be something as obscure as a bit of coral, but it's but yeah, I think it's gonna be an interesting one for us, because yeah, can you imagine, like, previously, and it's still like that here now, but previously you could have a beehive in, like, as I say, recreational hobbyist beekeeper, beehive in their backyard, look at it once a year, pinch a bit of honey, and then come back next year. It was kind of that easy. Now we know, we all know,
Yeah.
especially the listeners, that it's not going to be that easy anymore.
Yeah.
So it's going to
It was
change.
that way here too. It was that way here too.
Oh, was yes, yeah, would it be? Yes,
For sure.
yeah,
I mean, how many beekeepers have we heard just in our time of it say, oh, well, my grandfather, he worked bees and he'd put them out in the pasture and he'd, go poke his head in and, look once or
exactly.
twice a year and
Yeah, that's
drop
yeah,
honey. Like,
exactly,
we're on a schedule. We have to go in every 2 weeks at the least
yeah,
and check. And there's things we're looking for. And although a lot of beekeepers just love that because we want to play with bees, right? We love our bees. I'm sure if we told most of the hobby beekeepers in the US that they had to sit on their hands and not go in their hives for months on end, they'd be like, "Oh, what am I going to do? I've got to get in there."
exactly. That's yeah,
That's crazy. So you'll do fine and
yeah.
just, read my magazine and you'll find lots of solutions, may or may not work. So do you have small hive beetles though?
We certainly do.
Yeah.
African small hive beetles, that's been here for, I think, about 14 years now. It's an interesting one with the African small hive beetles, because looking at the landscape of Australia, where I am now, you can see me, I've got about 3 layers on, and
Yeah.
it is cold. It's not bitterly cold. Like, I think at the moment it's probably about 9 degrees Celsius. Don't ask me to convert that into Fahrenheit because I'm not sure, but about 9 degrees Celsius. And so it's cold outside, but even we get warm, hot summers. I mean, we can sort of deal with low 40 degrees Celsius, which I believe might be about 112 Fahrenheit, if that rings a bell, maybe. Anyway,
That's hot.
yeah, it is hot. Yeah, proper hot. Like Sahara Desert sort of hot.
Mm-hmm.
And we do get those. Not a heap of them, but we do every year. We'll experience sort of that sort of high temperature.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. Where I'm located, African small hive beetles are not an issue at all. Never lost a hive to African small hive beetles, and not a problem. You'll see them in your hives. Usually, once again, it would be more genetics, Chari, where you go, okay, those bees are just, I mean, they're not sort of trying to be as
Hygienic. They're not hygienic.
hygienic. That's right. But if we drive to, say, Brisbane, and that's a 16-hour drive, probably 1,600 kilometers, and you get up there, yeah, you've got to manage your hives for those, because it's basically hot and humid, subtropical / tropical, like Hawaii. There you go. It'd be very similar to
Yeah.
Hawaii. That sort of temperature. Yeah, and they're an issue up there. So, and I've seen hives there, they'll slime them out and be right.
Oh, I know.
So, yeah. So, but for us, yeah, it's not. We see them, we don't like them, but we just squish them as we go. But it's not a problem for us in Victoria.
Yeah, that's what that curved into that hive tool's for. And
Yeah,
so
exactly.
see, that's first thing that we learned. You, in one of your videos, I was looking kind of through, you had a white, you called it a hive mat. That's a white board that you had laying on top of a nuke. You were doing a hive inspection. It was a couple of years ago. Do you remember? It's a white board, and you said something. Was it something about hive beetles? What was that white board for? It
Oh,
was
I'm
like a
trying to.
piece of It's very thin.
Was it core flute? Might have been core flute, like they make signs. You see,
Oh, yeah, chloroplast. We call it chloroplast.
core place. We call it core flute, and it's like that. And it was an interesting one because I try things all the time. Like I'm always thinking ideas. I do a lot of driving, and always thinking these crazy ideas. And that was I did try that. Wasn't happy with it
Oh,
for hive beetles, and because they get stuck in those tiny little gaps,
yeah.
and underneath that may have been, I'm trying to remember the video, it might have been Chuck's cloth, they're for cleaning your dishes and wiping down. It's like
Oh, yeah, yeah,
a microfiber cloth, and they do work as well to keep them in there.
I
But
do.
as I said, was it more of a sightly type thing? You see these foreign bodies inside your hive, and you just go, you know what, I don't like them in there. I've just learned to go, you know what, it's more down to that, as you just said before, Chari, that hygienic behavior. And
Uh-huh.
that seems to be the key. But as I said, they're not a problem for us at all.
So here, and I'm Southeast Texas, so I'm in that hot, humid
Okay.
tropic, okay? We do have winter, but it only lasts about 2 months, and we all whine like babies around here because we are just freezing. I don't know what the conversion is, but we get down to about, 40 degrees, and I don't know what it is in Celsius, my apologies. But the hive beetles, except for those 2 months, are terrible in
Yeah.
my world.
Yeah.
And if we have a hive that's weak at all, if it's weak at all, we run 9 or 10 frames in a 10-frame box, right? We run length strip hives. And if it gets down where it's only 5 or 6 frames of bees, small hive beetles will go in and they'll take over and decimate a hive. So we have to keep very, very strong hives. And we use
Yeah. Okay.
in hives beetle traps that work very well. We put vegetable oil in those traps and the beetles go. Do y'all have those?
Yeah. See, I've seen those, and Vegemite, or I think over in the States called Marmite, or there's I've heard that one as well. Putting, because it's that
Oh,
yeasty type, and they're really attracted to the yeast with the vegetable oil.
oh, I'll be
Yeah.
darned.
A bit of Vegemite.
Yeah.
I know,
Vegemite. I've
yeah.
heard that word.
Yeah, a Vegemite, yeah, Vegemite, Marmite. There's another. I think the English call it Marmite. There is an American version. It's like Vegemite, and it's like a spread. So what Vegemite, like
Yeah.
Vegemite's an iconic type. Vegemite would be the equivalent to well, it's more savory, but Pop Tarts.
Pop tarts.
Pop
Ooh,
Tarts.
Pop tarts.
And it's basically like a Vegemite was like over 100 years ago, was the byproduct of when they were brewing beer. So it had this waste, right?
Ah,
It's like this sticky, it looks like molasses, and it's and they put salt in it.
okay.
And it's like this, a lot of people don't like it. They think it's disgusting, but if you're an Aussie, you love it. And you use that, butter on your toast, bit of butter, Vegemite, and oh, I'm dribbling. It's I'm dribbling just,
You love it so much.
I
That
love
is
it. Yeah.
hilarious.
But it's very yeasty. It would probably be that. It's not a pungent yeast, but if any of the listeners haven't tried Vegemite, you got to try Vegemite. Probably nine.
I would love to.
Yeah,
I,
no, I think 9 out of 10 people don't like it. I'll have to post you some. But
please.
anyway, but you put this Vegemite in those little beetle traps with the vegetable oil, as you just said, and it really attracts them. Like, because it's this yeasty sort of aromatic type thing. But anyway,
I'll be darned. There's a song from I'm gonna tell my age here, 80s or something, called something about a Vegemite sandwich.
oh, that's
Who's that?
It's
You
down
can,
under by is it Men in Work? The Vegemite sandwich. Yeah, that's
yeah, whoever that
Men
is.
at Work. Men at Work.
Men at work.
Men at Work. Men at Work. It's down under. That's a classic Aussie song. But once again from the 80s.
Uh, See, I knew I'd heard that word. That's where it was from. That's amazing. Yeah, as long as we stay on top of the hive beetles, then we're okay. What about that yellow-legged hornet? Have you read about, y'all have that? Any signs of that?
No, so yellow-legged hornets. We don't have any hornets as such here in Australia, but we
Oh,
do.
lucky
We
you.
do have. I call it its cousin, which is we call them wasps, and
Hmm.
their scientific name Vespula germanica, which is a European wasp, and they're a right pain in the backside for us here. They
They're
can
paper
really,
wasp, right? They have a,
yeah, that typical paper wasp. But well, so the biggest one, because I love the conditions here in Australia. The biggest one is actually in Tasmania, at the Launceston Museum. It is about 2/3 the size of a small car. So 2/3 the size. It was excavated out, and they really kept it intact. This nest, I don't know how they did. I think they must have used resin so it didn't all fall apart. But and it's in the museum there, and it weighs 96 kilos. This particular nest, and it's like it's massive. Like, and you see it, and it's absolutely incredible. But those wasps, yeah, will give the bees a hard time because of they've got that biology like a bumblebee, where I think they usually die out. The queen survive over
Mhm.
winter, and then they start up again. The nests here, they get bigger and bigger and bigger. And I've done some, which is, like the chairs that we're sitting on that big. You know what I mean? So
Wow.
they give us a hard time, but not like some of these other hornets. I see over in Europe as well. I think it's a Japanese hornet, which gives them
I
a hard
think that's
time.
what the yellow-legged hornet
Oh,
is.
okay. That's a little, is it
I
a big
think so.
bugger? Is it a real big
Oh,
bug?
you know what? That's not.
There's a
You're
different
right.
type. So
That one's bigger. That one is
there's a
bigger.
real big bugger that really just,
Yeah.
um, and there's a little small one, but I know, but we don't have those here. We've got this wasp.
So your wasp, is it one that's, does it feed on the honeybee or does it compete for the food source?
Oh no, it more no, so it won't sort of necessarily predate on the bees, like those ones that come and grab a bee and then take it off and eat it sort of it's the flesh of the bees. What it does is it can come into the hive and it's after the baby larvae. So the larvae of the bees come in there, and with a high density, there's a lot of pressure, and it can collapse hives. So it can collapse
So
them.
very
So
similar, very
that's, yeah,
similar.
yeah, very similar, and we've got a lot of the city slickers in the city of Melbourne. See a European wasp and a European honeybee. They do look similar. For someone who didn't know, they do look similar, but they're obviously different. So me and my little team, we got a license and we kill them. Yeah, don't like hurting animals, but I enjoy killing wasps.
I bet you do. Well, anything that's bothering
Yeah, that's
our
correct.
bees, right?
That's right.
Well, I
That's
do see that you do removals and stuff, which is super interesting. We've done that. We've done that. I put that in the rearview mirror because it's a lot of work. It's
fine,
a
isn't it?
lot of work. Well, moving beehives
Yes.
because I don't know about where y'all are, but if we have a hive swarm, odds are it's going to go to your neighbor's house and move into the wall. And that's a mess to remove. Do you do removals like that?
It's funny you say that, and I totally resonate, Sherry, is how much work it is. Pretty much stopped doing those ones. We do swarms. So we'll
Yeah.
remove swarms because swarms are nice and easy,
Yeah, they are.
in comparison. So there's another sort of company in Melbourne, or it's actually two others, where those difficult ones where you're climbing up ladders on a 2-3 story buildings and pulling boards off and scaffolding and all that jazz is I buck past those jobs. I just
Yeah.
refer them to another company, and they specialize in it and that because it is hard work and it's pretty full on.
It's actually an occupation here. There's a bunch of bee removers is what it's called. And I bet just in my area, there's probably 20 within
Wow.
a very short distance of me. And they all stay fairly busy in swarm season,
Yes.
in swarm season. Years ago, the feral colony, the wild bee colonies, there's still Apis mellifera, but those that were in the wild and not managed by a beekeeper got down to next to just very few of them. And then we started, I want to say around 2006, when all the problems started, everyone started getting sympathetic to the loss of bees. They can't be, we can't let them get extinct. So we need to save the bees. So everyone and their brother started keeping bees. And because of that, so many hobby beekeepers are, and I don't mean it to sound rude, but they weren't very good at it.
Yeah.
So they were spinning off swarms.
Yeah.
Every hive spin off a swarm, at least one. And that has repopulated the feral hives in nature for here.
Ah,
And that's one reason why I think we have a lot of bee removers, because there's so many feral hives and so many hobby beekeepers keeping bees.
that's interesting. Sherry. And what about Africanized bees? Do you have them
Oh,
there?
for sure, for
Oh,
sure.
really? Wow, really?
Oh, for sure. We had, not very long ago, because you know how a hive will attract more bees. It'll
Yes,
attract
yes,
a passing swarm.
yes.
We had one, we don't keep many bees here on our property because we have a small, just a half an acre of property, but, we had an Africanized hive move in to between us and our neighbor in some woods and some trees,
Yep.
okay? And we started getting stung every time we'd go out. We would go to mow the yard or just go out and sit to enjoy outside, and we'd start getting stung. And we're thinking, what in the world? Why? Because our bees are sweet, right? Our
Yes,
bees are
yes.
nice. And sure enough, it was an Africanized hive that had made its way in, and my husband killed it. It was
Yeah,
bad. It was very
yeah,
bad. They're very bad.
yeah, really.
Yeah, we're in the Africanized zone because Texas from Mexico, I mean, the southern part of the United States even is getting infiltrated with Africanized bees. They're terrible.
That's interesting. Wow.
You don't have mean bees, huh?
Ah, we got mean bees, but I don't think they're as mean as that. Like you get those nasty ones where you know what I mean, doing those ones, as if you've got no suit on or something like
Yeah,
that. But yeah, nothing compared to the videos that
yeah,
I've watched, you know what I mean, is
yeah.
no, we don't have them.
Now, well, we don't run into it very often. We don't let our hives requeen themselves. Or personally, we don't.
Yeah, okay.
We guard against it because the drones they have the tendencies.
Yes.
So we want to make sure that that we requeen every year so that they don't.
Yeah, okay.
And we have good genetics. So and I remember writing this down. What are your genetics? What are your queen genetics? Are they Italian stock?
Oh, I've got absolutely licorice all sorts because I like playing, seeing the different behaviors of the different types of bees. So we've got obviously Italians, which are great bee, but then the Caucasians, the Carnolians,
Mhm.
they I have those as well because just seeing obviously creating different propolis, their behavior is very different, especially
Mhm.
during winter. We've got to watch the Italians don't sort of that start of spring is that they don't bomb out because the Italians will go
They
and
do.
then we
Yeah.
get some crappy sort of weather that's not ideal and not enough sort of nectar source. They can bomb out. So yeah, like different genetics, but we've got, and I've tried, I love trying things because there's a couple of areas in Western Australia, which is, the other end compared to where we're located. It's called Rott Nest Island, ROTT, Nest
Mhm.
Island. And last couple of years, I've been playing around with those bees because there's some very interesting sort of work. They're a beautiful looking bee. Absolutely. She's sexy as like sexy, got this beautiful bright orange, and they just
Wow.
not and they just calm. They just you open up the hive, a touch of smoke, and they're like looking at you. Beautiful bee. So I'm sort of playing around with those. And we've got Kangaroo Island. It's Kangaroo Island, very interesting. A lot of so Kangaroo Island is off of South Australia, and it's the only bee sanctuary in the world. So they've got the original the Italian strain, the Gustica, from in Kangaroo Island. Very interesting. You're not allowed to take bees anywhere near the island. Bees obviously because it's so far sort of out from the mainland. Bees can't fly. There's no drones, and they've got the purest strain of bees
Oh,
anywhere in the world.
wow.
Yeah, really interesting. So interesting research there for listeners to have a look at that Kangaroo Island. So, yeah, so I like it. I got me licorice all sort bees, always playing around different genetics. Even like doing like a hybridization, between a Caucasian and an Italian.
Mhm.
I mean, it's kind of like some of these these dogs are like these designer dogs, cavoodles, spadoodles, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Labradoodles, you know what I mean? They seem to, I think, well, I think there's a bit of logic in that. I think that's the words hybrid vigor. So when you hybridize something, it creates obviously a genetic sort of, the genetic profiling is very different, and you actually can get this vigor from it. And so I do that, but I'm always, there's nothing, I don't know. Every year I do something, and some things work, some things don't. And then, it comes around the following year and you forget, what did I do that year? And every year's the same. We've just been dealing with, we had La Nina weather, and just the rain and the crappy weather, just absolute pouring down with rain. We're dealing with that. And then they said we're supposed to have this El Nino weather where we're going to be baking out and frying out, and everything's, birds are falling from the trees, but it wasn't. You know what I mean? They actually, the Bureau of Meteorology stuffed that one up. So, because a lot of, a lot of obviously farmers and things look at that. So they're very interesting. So dealing with weather, but yeah, I'm always doing stuff and crazy.
There's so much I want to pull out of what you just said. First of all, that weathermen are not always right, even where you are. They're not always right here either. Yeah, we've been going through a rainy season, flood actually. We're flood, where people losing houses, losing beehives because it's flood. So I do know that El Nino. We're supposed to be in El Nada this year, which means we're going to have terrible hurricanes. Do you get hurricanes?
No. Well, I think we call them tornadoes.
No, that's different.
Oh, is it? I have no idea. What is it? Tell me. What's the difference?
A hurricane is one that comes up through a body of water. Comes up through a body of water. So they call them tsunamis some places. I may be wrong. Somebody's gonna correct me, I'm sure. Like a tsunami, that it comes up from water system and comes up the coast, because I'm very close to the coast as well.
Okay.
I'm only probably 80 miles from the coast, the Gulf Coast. And so a hurricane comes up, and they categorize them, and they'll come in and they'll wipe out, and flood miles, all of Texas. It'll go up through the center of Texas and create a path. But we're supposed to worry about that this year. So your weathermen that's where I was going with that. I didn't want to badmouth hurricanes because we deal with them. But so on Queens, because that's where I was going. Do you graft them yourself, or you're taking the genetics from the two and you're grafting them yourself?
Good question. I used to do that a lot, and then I stopped doing it because and every year I'll start doing it and go, geez, I got things to do. It's crazy. You know what I mean? And so I'll, so I used to, but now I've just gone, nah, I want to, but I just don't. I've got like a lot of beekeeping friends that are close by. I leave that that grafting because I'm a big lad. I'm 6'3".
Oh, are you really?
Yeah, so it sort of might look petite in this chair, but I'm actually big, and it's kind of my big fat fingers. You know what I mean? So yeah, so I don't do that. But it's interesting. You just mentioned, Jerry, about the weather persons is only job in the world they can consistently get wrong and not get the sack. I know, because it's everywhere. We just and it's I get, but we're pretty. If we can send explorers and all these amazing things, you'd think we'd be pretty better at getting the weather, because the weather's a pretty.
You'd think would be better.
That's right. Outside of our industry, there's a lot of other people who depend on the weather, and they just consistently get it wrong. And
get it really wrong. Yeah.
Consistently. And it's, I mean, we're pretty smart.
I know. So you've heard of Houston, Texas, I bet. Yes. So we're close to Houston, far enough away, but close enough.
How close in miles?
Sorry?
How close? How close in miles to Houston?
I'm probably 30 miles, 35 miles.
Okay, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, not far, just far enough. I don't love it because it's too many people. It's too many people. What was I gonna say? See?
I know
I didn't know what I was gonna say. I remember now. See, that's what happens when you get older. It's like squirrel. Is that there's 3 weathermen that everybody watches from Houston. There's probably more, but there's 3 main weathermen, and I have all of them on my phone. So if you want to know what's going to happen with the weather, you have to go through and look at each one and then do the law of averages.
No way.
Yeah, it's that bad. I mean, they'll be totally polar opposite of each other. Isn't that?
No way. Really?
Yeah,
That's crazy. So
I
they're
know.
even so we're gonna rain, sunshine, yeah, somewhere in the
Freezing
middle.
cold. Right. All right, let's talk about bees better. All right, nutrition. I want to talk about nutrition. So we're entering summer and you will eventually get there. So entering summer, we're in honey production right now. Actually, we are almost putting a line in the sand because we're basically done. Our primary crop is the tallow tree. It's called a Chinese tallow tree. It's an invasive species, not native to US, certainly not native to Texas, but it's a very prolific nectar producer. And so we're nearly done with that. And when we get done with that, we pull our honey and we have to start feeding because we enter what we call dearth. Is that all familiar with you? Do y'all do that sequence?
So no, it's little bit different for us because we sort of, if you've got a more stationary apiary, yes, you'll get that. But there seems to be, we're dealing with the Australian bush. There's this massive variety of eucalyptus trees. So now I think you have got eucalyptus over there, and I think they're invasive. I think
I don't have them here.
yes, yeah, I think somewhere, I think yeah. But so we've got this massive Aussie bush. And with the Aussie bush, we get all these different varieties. So we can have you have this dearth, but it's usually pretty good if you move your bees around a little bit and be a little bit migratory. You can, beekeepers get. I mean, I've heard of beekeepers getting hundreds of kilos of per hive if you move them around, hundreds of kilos, like hundreds. Like, and I'm not exaggerating. Like, as long as you're moving them, and they're not, I mean, a reasonable distance, but nothing too sort of like, Florida to, California sort of distance, nothing sort of extreme like that. But so it's, interesting. So we can get that, but but if it's more stationary, we can have that dearth. Yeah.
So we feed after that. Do those beekeepers have to feed because we only rob what is in the supers because
Yes.
we don't rob what's in the brood
No.
nest.
Yes. Yes.
So do you feed after that?
We try to avoid feeding, and we had this, it's the worst I've ever seen. And I heard beekeepers, that are, really old beekeepers said, this is 3 seasons ago. They've never seen a season like it. There was during springtime, every second, third day seemed to be raining. And so, we had to feed then.
For
And it
sure.
was had to feed then. I do feed bees if I have to. You know what I mean? I kind of want them nutrition, leave as much honey as possible. I don't need to pinch the honey. You know what I mean? The honey's, I don't like this word, but it's more of a byproduct for me. You know what I mean? I'm all geared up for lots of honey, but I don't need to. I don't even use queen excluders. So I just let bees.
I saw that on your videos. So
Yeah.
do you sell a lot of honey though? You make a lot of honey.
Oh, I do. It's probably, I sell maybe, it's hard to work out every year, maybe 4.5, 5 ton, 4 to 5,000 kilos. So
That's
it's not much. Like it's really, it's not, might sound like a lot. I don't push the honey. It's not massive. I don't know. It's in pounds. I think you 2.2 pounds a kilo. So what's that? Say 5, so 10,000 pounds.
that's a lot.
It's a lot. It is, but it's not. When some other beekeepers, it's just like you can get massive. We get big flows. If you move your bees around, it can actually.
Yeah,
Oh, you really can. And I think Varroa's going to change this. You know what I mean? We'll see.
unfortunately.
Yeah, I think it will. So we'll change that. But I think we're just going to be better beekeepers, as I sort of mentioned before. But yeah, it's
What
very interesting.
how much is it? How much is your honey like per pound or the container?
So I sell mine. So while retail is $12 for half a kilo, it's $12 Australian. So let's do the maths on that because I can give you a good because it'd be a good comparison. So 2.2 pounds to the kilo. So we'll call it
1 pound, so
one
$12 about a pound.
12 Aussie dollars 1 pound, which is probably eight American dollars per pound. That's retail. Is that good?
Well, that's cheap.
Oh,
We,
there you go. That's it. Okay.
it
That's good.
is,
Yeah.
no, I mean cheap, you know,
Yeah.
don't
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
sound
No, of
bad.
course. Yeah.
It's
No, but yeah, comparison.
inexpensive.
Yeah. 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 In
It's
comparison.
inexpensive. We sell, and I know it's all over the place what
Yeah.
people sell it for, depending on their market, you know, if they're a niche market, if they're able to sell it in a nice fancy store.
Yeah.
We sell ours for about, well, a mason jar, you know, just
Yes.
the
Yes.
canning jar, the small one's $12, American money, obviously,
Yeah.
$12.
12.
So about
$12.
$12 per pound and a half. And then
Yeah.
a quart mason jar we sell for 20, but a lot of people get 25 for it. A lot of people.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
That's
was just
interesting.
curious how
Yeah.
much
It's good to see the comparisons. Yeah. I
it
mean,
is,
yeah, to work that out. It's interesting. Sure.
but I
Yeah.
don't make near as much as you do either. Much smaller amount,
Yeah.
much smaller amount. Um, so you keep Langstroth hives. You don't do anything out. I mean, it's just regular. Is it 10 frame or 8 frame? Or?
Nah, we use eights. So 8 frames. Here it's predominantly, I know if you looked at beekeepers, I don't know what the sort of the statistics would be, but I would sort of say across the board maybe 60, could be 70% of people use an 8 frame full depth Langstroth hive. A lot of people, obviously commercial beekeepers, do use the 10 frame.
Mhm.
So I use 10 frames. I use eights. That's what I personally use. That seems to be across the board. I've played around, I've got a couple of top bar hives, Kenyan top bar hives, worry hives, all types. I like, playing around and messing around with different types. You know what I mean? So that's my hobby.
Yeah.
The different hives. So yeah, I like doing that. Yeah. But Langstroth, that full depth
That's your
Langstroth.
production hives. That's the ones you
Correct.
work with.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
that's us too. You know, we've
Exactly.
got a top bar and you play with that. Top bar is not very popular. And my Austin friends, there's a segment of Texas, the Austin, Texas area that very popular and they're very good at it. But it seems like the rest of the state, everyone uses Langstroth
Yeah,
popularly.
that's right.
It's easier. I say
Exactly.
maybe it's easier because that's what I know how to do. I don't know. I'm not sure. So in the winter, so we're about to prepare. As soon as we pull honey, we start, our bees even start preparing for winter. Their mindset is to prepare for winter because they've got to put back, right? First of all, we've taken all their honey stores and they're going, what the heck? I just worked all that and you just took all my stuff, right? But we're preparing them for Varroa. We've got to
Yes.
test and treat. We've got to start building their honey reserves back up. You said that you start working on preparation for winter as well earlier, ahead of time. How long of a span is that for you? And I know I'm mixing that up, but
No. I get what you're putting down,
do
Chari.
you?
Yeah. So if we looked at over the 4 seasons, so it's kind of started June as it's cold, but early next month, I will start just looking at me hives. Now, when I say looking, I'll use like an infrared camera. I don't want to open them up and expose the brood because it's too cold. I get thermal shock and so forth. But I will give them a slide, and I can do it without hurting or disrupting the bees. Is a pollen patty. So give them some pollen because I find next month pollen, and I'll start munching on that, and then we get some good strong colonies coming into spring. And in spring, we got obviously, pollination. We can really, as I said, from start to spring till the 1st of autumn, I think you guys call it fall, we can get nectar flows. You move around, you can find a nectar flow pretty, pretty between those seasons. But then say, usually a good benchmark is Easter time. So Easter time here, the days are nice and sunny, but it's getting cold at night. We just make sure we get our bees squared away, ready for winter. Now, once again, that's where I'm located. There's beekeepers. I was talking to some yesterday in Queensland last night, and they've got drones in their hives, and they can get drones right through winter. So it's very, very different sort of beekeeping. But that's what I do. As I said, I don't use queen excluders. Try and minimize feeding. I'll only feed if I have to keep that colony alive. I'll make sure they've got plenty of stores in there for them. So that's
What's
what
your amount of stores? So how many stores do you have to keep? How many pounds? I know you're kilos, but
yeah, that's right. So
to
for more,
overwinter without feeding.
I like a full box. So if I go, okay, let me do the math because that's a really good question.
Sure.
So 25 kilos times 2.2 pounds, 55 pounds.
5 pounds to
55
overwinter,
pounds.
and then you don't have to worry about having
Oh,
to
then
feed.
it's like, I can go to the Bahamas, go to the Caribbean, go to Mexico and enjoy my winter knowing that the girl's going to be okay.
That's pretty cool. It depends on the hive. If it's depending on if it's a double deep or even some people, most people do double deeps over winter. And if we'll keep 30 to 40 to 50 pounds,
Yeah, okay.
and we feel safe as well. I think our climates are very similar. Mine particularly, is very similar to yours to a degree.
Yes.
So, I mean, our bees are pretty much set and we don't have to feed them over winter. We do the pollen patty as well,
Yes.
going
Yeah.
into spring,
Yes.
to get that protein built up for the queen to go in and start laying and get going.
Exactly. And question for you, Sherry. Do you
Sure.
get earthquakes in your neck of the woods?
Not in mine.
Okay.
California does.
Okay. California does. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. The reason why I asked that, I just always wondered, a lot of animals know something's about to happen. I wonder what it'd be like with the bees. I mean, if there's an
Yeah.
earthquake not far, I mean, maybe once this goes up, someone in the comments can go, let us know, because I find it interesting.
I want to
Is that-
know too.
yeah, interesting. Do the bee
Um,
sudden change?
I know that if we've worked bees, because when hurricanes come, and we talked about that earlier, when a hurricane's coming, the barometric pressure changes dramatically. And bees are different. I can't say that probably a entomologist could tell you exactly what's different, but I just know that they're different because we've had to go to our bee yards and strap the hives down because the wind is going to blow so,
Yeah.
well over 100 miles an hour. So we wouldn't want it to blow
No,
over. And if you disturb the bees during that time of strapping them down and getting them ready for a hurricane, they are not happy bees. They're
really?
like, don't mess with me because I got things to do. But I don't know that that's what they're thinking. It could be just the barometric pressure,
Yeah.
them knowing something's wrong,
Is that something with strapping down the bees? Is that like a yearly, occurrence? A yearly?
No,
No. Okay. It can be okay. So it's
we
not.
haven't had um, a severe hurricane in quite a few years.
Oh,
Thank
really?
you.
Okay.
We not to frighten anybody that's going to be watching this, but we do expect a busy hurricane season this year because out of all those weathermen I was telling you about,
Yeah.
they all seem to agree, which is a little frightening.
Okay. Really?
And that we may have a rather busy hurricane season. And if that's the case, we just have to be proactive and make
Yeah.
sure that they're stable, just strap them down to the ground. We just put straps over them and those things like that you screw into the ground to tie
Yeah.
a dog
Oh,
up at the park,
yeah. Yes.
like that. And it
And
just
just
holds the beehive down. I
that's amazing.
know. It is crazy, isn't it? It is great.
Yeah.
I want to, before we wrap, man, it's almost been an hour. I can't believe that. I want to read this because we didn't meet, but I first communicated with you last September of
Yeah.
23 because you posted something online that was super cool and I want to read it, and everybody that wants to see it in the form that it originally was in, go to the October issue of the magazine. But it is so, I don't know if you're a poet or not. Are you a poet?
No, no, I'm just a humble beekeeper,
Yes,
Sherry.
you are. I'll read this. Doesn't take but a second. In the world of beekeeping, we don't just cultivate honey, we become a part of a rhythm much larger than ourselves. As the sun begins to dip below the horizon, casting golden hues across the sky, we pause and take in the serene beauty. Surrounded by our buzzing bee families, we're reminded daily of the simple wonders of nature. Watching sunsets like this, with the hum of bees as the background score, is a moment of pure magic. It's moments like these that make all the hard work worthwhile. Here's to nature's symphony and the endless beauty it brings. That's like a mic drop. It's so good.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you.
That was so good. And it spoke to my heart because we worked really hard on bees. There's pictures of me and my husband where we're just drenched in our suits, pulling supers, where we're just, about to pass out from the heat. And this, you're exactly right. It's moments with the bees that bring us back to the serenity of it, right?
It's so true. And I think sometimes we forget, and I do, and I have, but I'm trying to learn this, where I will just stop. And if you've got put a little bee on your finger and just stop and have a look at that bee.
Yeah.
Study that bee. Just look at it, admire its beauty, what it's doing. You'll see it cleaning its antennae and all these things that this bee does, because we sometimes need to look at bees in this macro point of view and really just look at it, as opposed to just, in the bees and you're seeing, but just stop and look and appreciate those beautiful creatures.
Because they truly are such an incredible creature. And I don't care how many articles you read, how many of my articles you read, you'll never learn as much as you will until you do just what you said, Ben. Stop and observe and look, watch the hive, sit in front of the hive, watch the bees go back and forth and do your own observation of how their nature is. Bees didn't write the books. We did.
That's right. Exactly. So
right.
that is so true. And that's one thing, no matter how many years I've kept bees and how many more years I will keep bees, I always see myself as an apprentice beekeeper.
Yeah.
As an apprentice is someone who is learning on a daily basis, someone who's, thirsty for knowledge, hungry for it. So that's where people sometimes, say, Ben, you're a guru. Well, no, I'm not. I'm always learning, always doing things. I can assure you, I've made so many mistakes, so many failures, but I have learned from those. But I am always going to be an apprentice beekeeper.
I can't top that. I agree. I think we're going to stop there because that was just beautiful. Thanks so much, Ben. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you coming and visiting with me.
Oh, that was amazing. We'll have to do this again. Let's do it maybe in 6 months, and we can talk about Varroa. You might see me all of a sudden, Ben's beard has gone like this.
You'll look like my hair because this is really gray.
Right. Exactly. Look like your hair, like on, Ben, what happened?
We'll do that. I will absolutely hold you to that, and I'm going to mark my calendar.
Sounds amazing.
Okay? Thanks, Ben.
Thank you so much.
We'll talk then. Bye, y'all.